Welcome to Club Damingo, brought to you by Cyclone Comics.
What was my opinion when you asked me?
I think you said it was shit. What are you sending this crap at me for? Get this out of my face. Something like that.
Correct. Right.
No, I think you said it had legs.
Hello, Tim. How's it going?
Oh, good. Let's pretend we haven't been chatting for 40 minutes already.
Now, last week you ended your chat about the Greener Pastures shorter film with a hint about a story that you were going to tell about the writing of the comic book. Is that story, or is there another story involved?
The writing of the comic itself?
Well, you were flipping through a big wad of A4 paper that you printed out. And
Yeah.
I said, is that for the first issue? And you went, that's a bad joke, Gary.
Oh, yeah.
And then you said,
Okay.
that's a story for another time.
So it's another time. I'll tell you what that's about.
Exactly.
So that was the printout of the script for what I was lovingly calling for a long time, Greener Pastures, the end. It's the last story that we tell. And so it's set in the 2020s with the middle-aged Trevor, right? Which is what the short film is mostly based on or influenced by, rather than 1990s Trevor, who's like young, early 20s young man. So where Michael and I had when Greener Pastures went on hiatus, it was because Michael and I were both having children and having careers and having mortgages, and it just was hard to keep going after issue 7. And there was a point that every time I felt like I was ready to dive back in, Michael wasn't, and every time Michael felt he was ready, I wasn't, and we just couldn't synchronize. And there was a point where Michael said, I don't think I can write those stories anymore anyway, because that was like a 23-year-old hear that anymore, and it just feels weird. And it was at that point where I went, oh, well, I guess that's it for Greener Pastures. I guess there'll be no more. That was quite a while ago. I can't even remember exactly when, but it was quite a while ago. And then it was probably a few years later that I saw Martin Wagner, who wrote and drew Hepcats back in the day, back in the 90s. One of my favorite comics ever. It was so good, Hepcats. Have you seen it, Gary? You've ever read
I know of it. I haven't actually read an issue.
Oh, yeah, it's really great. It ends on a enormous cliffhanger, like a really emotionally a kick in the head cliffhanger, and then we never got the ending. So don't read it if that's going to bother you. But everything up until that point, the storytelling, the art, the
So
character drama,
Hepcats
all
back
of
in the
that.
day was one of the primo independent black and white comics that was
Yeah,
happening with Cerebus and Bone, Hepcats, and
yeah.
a few others.
Starchild.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So Martin Wagner did like a 7-page, like a weird number page, 7-page mini comic, which you could download for free. Uh, and he just did this tiny little story of all the characters and where they are now, like in real time. Just skipped it, just skipped all the intervening years and didn't give any information about the backstory of the intervening years. Just this guy's in hospital and these two are married and blah 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 blah. And I thought that's a really cool idea, and I can still remember the conversation or the context of the conversation at a big comic convention. Michael and I, like in like the cross intersection of two big alleyways in one of the big comic conventions with about 4 other people, I think, just chatting about comics generally. And Michael was there, and I was there, and a few other people. And I talked across the conversation to Michael, and I just said this about Hepcats. I said there might be something in that, right? Skipping the intervening years, and then for the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, the conversation continued with everybody else. And I looked across at Michael again, and he was like this. just head tilted back, mouth open, eyes to the sky, going, "Oh, you're writing it now, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I am." So we got past that roadblock of writing about 22-year-old, young men, and he then took what we already had as what the ending was going to be. The ending has always been written since the first time Michael gave me like 2 pages of dot matrix printouts of what the story of Trevor Bovis would be. There was always the ending, and it hasn't changed that much. And so he took that and put it in current time, and with a middle-aged Trevor instead. And it added so much more emotional impact to it all. I think that Trevor has been disconnected from that circle of friends, and disconnected from his life on the farm, and disconnected from what his heritage was, etc., and stuck in this office and soulless kind of office work, etc. And the thing is, right, so that wad of paper I showed you is probably that thick. It takes me 3 days to read it every time I decide I'm going to reread the script to reacquaint myself. Obviously not 3 days of 7 hours a week, but it's so dense what he wrote. But when he said, "Yeah, I'll do that," it'll be 3 issues. So an issue's about 20 pages, or when Michael and I do it, 20 to 30 pages. He said it'll be about 3 issues, right? So he gave me the script for the first issue. I said, "Oh, there's 3 issues here, Michael. There's 3 issues just in this first one."
Yeah.
And then he gave me the second issue, the script for the second issue, and it was probably twice as long. And he's I'm going, "Oh, Michael, this is not 3 issues." He said, "No, it's 3 chapters. Let's call it 3 chapters, and we'll just be as long as we want." And then when he was giving me the third chapter, he said, "Yeah, it's 5 chapters. It's 5 chapters." So we went from 3 issues to 5 chapters, each of which are much more than an issue each. But it's like, I'm not arguing because it's so good. So I don't tell Anne-Marie this very often because it will probably scare her. But I think my rough estimation, looking at the script, is of 5 chapters, and each chapter will be 1 issue longer than the last. So I reckon it's like 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 issues per chapter, maybe something like that. So there's a lot of issues to go. When we do get to the 2020 stuff, which, like I said, I think last week, you printed the first 24 pages of. That's like the opening salvo of that 2020 stuff.
Right.
But we've actually got 3 good issues. When I got Michael reacquainted and re-excited about the whole thing, when I said let's do issue 8 as the warm-up, because you've already written that back in 1997, and I'll just use that, and he decided we probably should change some of that for various reasons. I think he got reacquainted with everything, and we've got 3 issues, at least 3 issues still set in the 1990s that I'd like to do, and that's actually 3 discrete issues before we get back to the 20. It could change. I actually was going through my old files and found my copy of the 24-hour comic that I did.
That's right. Yeah, you sent that to me recently and thought,
"Oh, yeah.
And asked me, is this good enough? I think I quite like it still.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
which was only published in 2002 at a comic convention as a mini comic, and was never finished. Most of it is still pencil work. And the first couple of pages are rough ink work.
Yeah. What was my opinion when you asked me?
I think you said it was shit. What are you sending this crap at me for? Get this out of my face. Something like that.
Correct. Right.
No, I think you said it had legs.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it was it suffered from being a 24-hour comic and being in the 24th hour and that whole thing, but the actual initial idea that you had when you sat down with a cup of coffee and a blank piece of paper and a pencil was sound and would make for a good issue.
Yeah, I think so. And it's one of the few things that I've written all by myself.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I'm meeting with Michael tomorrow night to chat about a whole bunch of different things. So I should pack it with me to bring, and I might bring it up with him
definitely.
to see. And that would definitely be something that I would say, here is what I wrote. Do you want to like manipulate it or whatever? And we might make that another issue in the middle. You know, the whole thing with the 24-hour comic is it's 24 pages in 24 hours. And, you know, maybe there's a bit of fat in there that could be trimmed down to 20 or 18 pages, perhaps. Who knows? But
But
I
given
actually really
Michael's
liked it.
history, he might turn it into a 3-issue miniseries.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. Um, I just things I really liked about it, which felt like we were probably getting to, and if we cut it off now, we will be missing it. Is the interaction between Trevor and Colin and Caesar, just as friends. We haven't really done a lot of that in the comics so far, so it'd be. I kind of would like to see that happen a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's what I commented as a standout for that issue was that relationship, the flatmate relationship was
Mm,
in the foreground. And
yeah.
it was a nice change from the other issues. So yeah,
So have
I
you ever
vote
done a 24-hour comic?
no. God, I can only no. Who came up with that stupid idea? I mean,
Oh,
really.
Scott McCloud.
Oh, yeah, he's not going to go far in this world, is
Oh,
he?
Scott.
He's
No. What a loser.
what a
What's he on
loser.
about?
For someone who gets triggered by deadlines, that's my cooling system as they go whizzing past. The whole idea of
Yeah.
a 24-hour comic is absolutely ridiculous. Just
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote that in the editorial, I think, in the published version, that people say it's like a religious experience. Oh, it was so amazing. I learned all this stuff about myself and how I make comics, and it was just more hard work than it was worth.
yeah. I think there's value to be had if you were with other people in a single room, sleeping, you know, like the pajama party kind of vibe, being with a bunch of other cartoonists working together across the whole day, pizza runs, chip runs, coffee runs, the whole bit. But doing it by yourself, I think, is really,
Yeah.
yeah, doing it hard for no real reason, except you got yourself almost an issue of a comic there that you can revise.
Yeah, and that might be what we do.
Yeah,
But you know, you see people like uh again, I mention his name a lot because he's one of my biggest influences, but you know, Dave Sims' 24-hour comic, or even Neil Gaiman. I know there's problems with Neil. But you know, you look at probably, I think I saw one from Alan Moore once, maybe I'm wrong, but there are people who, you know, who are so good at their storytelling that and their cartooning at whatever level that is, that they pull out a 24-hour comic that is just amazing to read. As amazing as their fully thought through work, you know. So yeah.
yeah. So the idea is you come to the table with no story ideas at all. Uh,
Yeah.
that's very
That
hard.
that,
If you know
that
you're going to front up for a 24-hour comic gig, to
yeah.
not think about it
Yeah,
beforehand.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh, it's not that hard when you're a busy person.
uh, okay.
But yeah, in its purest form, it is let's come up with a brand new idea starting now. So yeah. There's probably a little cheat that I used characters that are already existing, you know, and set it
Yeah.
in a universe that's already existing.
But,
There's probably something to gain from it where you do the whole side project sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah. There's this whole thing that I've been sort of tapping into or overhearing to a certain extent about talking about deadlines, about the look and feel of a comic that has obviously been done to meet a deadline compared to one that has been taken that extra bit of time and is naturally finished. And the artists and the writers and the creators involved have taken the extra time to finish it the way they want to because they can. Uh,
Mm.
versus the corporate comics that are driven by deadlines, so you get this compromise. Um, and it's interesting. I don't know, I don't know what I'm trying to say in connection to a 24-hour comic, but from a artist's point of view, I'd always want to have that extra time to finish a work without the deadline, like as appropriate, to do as
For
best
sure.
as I possibly can. Because once it's printed forever.
Yeah.
So and it seems to fly in the face of getting high quality best selling work that the corporate comics are driven by deadlines still.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody. We were talking about Dean Haspiel just before we came on online and at Vito.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm reading Vito's Substacks from the beginning, and he mentions that Dean calls those kind of comics franchise comics. uh, I mean, that's the idea, right? It's a commercial enterprise, and it's a franchise, and it's like they've all got to be done on time every month. So yeah,
Yeah, but there are
I like
ways
those.
around that by the floppies. Limited series will allow an artist to finish the work or the creative team to finish the work
Yeah,
at their own time. It may not be realistic for them to pay the bills on a regular basis, but it creates an elevated level of quality for the work that would still see.
who
Uh,
wants to pay bills anyway?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't like paying bills.
I mean,
But
I
isn't that the
think,
thing? I, again, like I said to you, I've been listening to Comic Lab and the podcast, and their whole thing is how do you make a living from being a cartoonist or a comic book creator, a comics creator, uh, and like you've got to have the content made, right? How else do you make a living if the
yeah,
content's not
but the
there?
the content has to be good and of a standard. And if it seems rushed or below standard, then you're not going to sell the comics because it's not of a high enough
Yeah,
standard. So it flies in
yeah,
the face of everything needs to be tipped out on the table. The industry needs to be tipped upside down, and all the pieces and playing bits on the table need to be reconstructed to allow a higher page rate for the corporate comic artists and writers, more
yeah,
time for them to be able to do better work, less expectations of them trying to compete with Hollywood as far as widescreen TV, like double splashes with cityscapes and like armies of alien ships coming down, all to be done at the same time as you would a headshot, like
yep,
a full page headshot. I mean, expectations have changed since the 60s when Kirby was doing his rather
yeah,
rather simple, in inverted commas, style of comics compared to someone like Jim Lee doing his Batman comics. And
mm,
Jim Lee hasn't done a regular comic in ages. They've allowed him to do
mm,
this Hush 2 thing, but it's been inserted in the numbering of the regular series. And that needs to be done more and more for those franchise comics to survive, I think.
mm.
But
It
that's
was.
certainly,
I think there was a period again in that black and white kind of boom stage where they looked like a solution was appearing, which was so I'll use Paul Chadwick and his comic Concrete as an example, where he would write a miniseries and then he would draw the miniseries, and it would be released monthly as 4 books or 6 books or 6 floppies, right? And then they'd be collected as a trade paperback. And then it would take him a year or 18 months or who knows how long before the next miniseries would be ready. And then he would release that. But you knew that once it came out, you'd get your monthly fix, and that you'd have a trade paperback at the end. And as far as Paul Chadwick was concerned, I would assume it meant that he would get a book on the shelf next to all of the other concrete books, and then that builds up that library, which hopefully it's all that shelf space that you sell again and again and again, rather than the floppies. So yeah, Marvel trying to make, especially back then, I guess I don't know how it works now, but trying to make their monthly money as their main money through regular issues, and then the trade paperbacks were, gravy after that. But I think as uh, independent artists, we look at it the other way around, rather than the floppies being the income and the trade being the gravy. It should be the other way around. Get a bit of gravy off the monthlies, and then hopefully have a trade that people will buy forever.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I would feel sorry for anyone entering as a buyer, a comic book reader, entering DC or Marvel's shelf space and trying to define what the hell is
oh
going on and which issue do I pick up to have a go at this. And when you even have things like Absolute Batman coming out, where's Bruce Wayne? I mean, the movies tell me that it's Bruce Wayne. Where's Bruce Wayne?
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's this
Pop culture tells me it's Bruce Wayne, right? It's like,
exactly.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Mm.
They
So
should have all been generational and died off in 40-year batches and
yeah,
30-year batches, whatever.
but we're still just
Which is
talking
what
about
Marvel
those.
movies, yeah, it's what the Marvel movies are trying to do, right? They're quite happy to kill off characters when the actors are getting too old or too tired to want to play them, and say, well, it's the second generation of Iron Man and Captain America, and we don't have Black Widow, we have White Widow, and blah 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 blah. It's interesting that they're being brave enough to do it. And I feel like they kind of figured that perhaps they can, perhaps they're going to push as hard as they can with the Marvel Cinematic Universe until uh, until the audience is sick of it. And I think they were just expecting the audience to be sick of it by now, so it wouldn't matter if they killed off their
what, you're still here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, to enable that generational thing to happen in their movies, so they can just keep going. I think.
I resent the fact that you and I, as individuals with the history that we've had, I resent that we're talking about these franchise comics as comics, because it's not the only picture. It's only a slice of the pie, not the bigger picture of world comics, let alone the bigger picture of North American English-speaking comics. There's more to it than that. And the Batmans and Supermans and Wolverines and X-Men's of the world are diminishing returns even for the larger companies, because Hollywood's taken the place of getting bums on seats or people to read or view those characters. So it's a shrinking part of the pie, but the industry is still going strong on other kinds of work, particularly young teen and kids comics. And it's a sad, don't get me started on publication sizes either, print sizes. US standard comic size is a joke. You got me started. Anyway.
They just want it to be read on your phone. That's the thing, right? So that's the training. Everyone's reading everything on their phones anyway. So what's the big deal if we go from floppy size down to paperback size down to, whatever? Yeah.
Let alone the practical decision of tariffs and getting stuff printed in the States from Canada, and all that political situation that's blowing up in everyone's faces at the moment. That adds to the bad decision making of generations of people in control at Marvel and DC.
Yeah. So what are we doing about that? How am I going to get my comics to America now? Where do I print them? Yeah, I know you're not. I want to though. This is where we differ reasonably significantly. I'm still adamant that I want to get in on the local comic shop bandwagon.
You're hanging on to the old ways, Luke. You're hanging on to the old ways.
I am, and that includes using paper.
Use the manual controls, Luke. That's what it's there for.
Oh, I'm too scared.
Yeah, but look, it's the American scene is too hard to read at the moment. As far as Marvel and DC, distribution is still shaking itself out. Some companies will come to the fore when the dust settles. Others will be out of the scene. I think the next year or two, it'll just be a lot of like the political scene. There's a lot of dust to settle. And so if you're about to jump in to try and get that American market, I'd just hold off and look elsewhere and just wait and see. I think it's very dangerous putting your money on
I spent a day, probably closer to 2 days, putting together my submission package for Diamond, and I did that in all honesty, like the week that the whole Diamond thing happened. It's like I was just finishing off all of this work, and then Diamond announced that they were going into what is it? Not liquidation, but whatever, bankruptcy.
Yeah,
yeah. And I was going, oh, well, what do I do? I'll just carry on. But reading the commentary on what is going to maybe happen regarding that, I went, you know what? I actually have a lot of work to do this year already. I'll put all of that back by another year. I actually wanted to get it done like 2 years ago, but I'm going to just put it back for at least a year before I even look at how to get into that market. But pretty keen on getting into that market, yeah.
And that's fair enough. But just the mess that's happening at the moment, just hold fire for a little while and see how the dust settles.
Yeah.
It's just so unpredictable, and I wouldn't want to put my money on the table until the air clears a little bit to see who's left standing. It's the only smart thing to do, I think. But that's not to say that the American distribution and pathways into the American scene won't be defined and made easy again 18 months down the track. I mean, there will be some winners and losers. and a restructuring. But currently, what a mess! What a mess!
Do you see Diamond disappearing completely, or do you think someone will buy it and know that they can make a profit from it?
I reckon it'll go.
You reckon it'll go?
Yeah, I reckon
Wow.
it's a corpse. That's people.
That
The vultures are pecking at the corpse.
Wow, that's huge. That's a huge change to the whole way everything works.
I think that they fundamentally their trust has been compromised. Their business
Right.
their business trust has been compromised, and yeah, I think that time has come that new owners would have to do. You'd almost have to rename, and it becomes another thing. It's like the antique axe with 50 different handles and 50 different axe heads, and it's still an antique axe. No, it's not. You've had 50 heads and 50 handles. It's something different by now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, interesting. All right. Well,
a
we'll wait and see.
diamond distribution by any other name, it might still be around, but geez, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what it was as a feasible distribution outlet. It'll be haunted by its mistakes for a long time, but I think they'll end up winding up totally after they've sold what they can sell and the carcass has been pecked clean. I think the body will go, "Hey, I'm dead and I didn't even know it."
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'll wait and see.
Yeah. But Luna and all those other ones are, like amply growing to fill that void anyway. So,
Hmm.
you know, you know, Diamond have made some errors and
Yeah.
they're paying the price.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh well. It'll give me it gives me a good reason to not bother with it for a year while I just try to get some pages drawn.
And you've made a very good point that while all the business is crumbling and the distribution is crumbling and politics is crumbling, everything is all in various states of flux, you've always got more pages to draw. And it
Yeah.
always serves the purpose of getting more pages under the belt. So when you want to move, you've got more pages done. When
Yeah.
you want to make
Exactly.
a green light of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. So,
Yeah.
I don't
Cool.
necessarily see it as a negative. It's certainly a negative for the people involved with Diamond and the small publishers that are being affected by it. And I think it affects the owners and Steve Jeppy and all those people that are running Diamond. But I think for those people that are wanting to get into the industry and distribute their own comic, it's just going to be a change of face, and there'll be other businesses that services the North American comic industry the same way Diamond used to.
Mm. I hope so. I hope it doesn't. I hope it's not an opportunity for big business to come in and like cut out what they see as being unprofitable aspects of the situation, which is small indie comics, uh, and thinking that the only game in town is Marvel, DC, Image, and
There'll be
that's
some.
the
There'll
thing,
be.
right? It's that the continual marginalization of all the indie stuff is what I'm afraid of.
Mm. Well, I tend to think about the whole thing as Marvel and DC, set them aside. I think, for me, I think you have to set them aside because they're running their own race. The real leaders, to my mind, are publishers like Image that have a creator-driven pathway, and they've seen success in promoting individual IPs and creators and create their own product. I think there's Marvel and DC, over there in the wilderness, slowly rotting on the vine, and then there's Image, who are not rotting on the vine. They're going quite well, and they're doing that by promoting individual ideas and individual creators and their ideas. And I think that and things like even Fantagraphics, who really have been around for so long, you'd think they would have died 1,000 deaths, but now they're coming out the other end of their long life as a well-respected, not a very large publisher perhaps, but a well-respected arts publisher. And you got publishers and Drawn and Quarterly and Top Shelf, and let alone the mainstream publishers like Angus and Robertsons and Norton's and a few other people like that are seeing the validity of publishing sequential art and graphic novels. So I think Marvel and DC can still be over there, and if you're a young artist who wants to grow up to draw Spider-Man, you can still do that, but you're going to have to learn how to ride that treadmill of Marvel and DC, which is different to dealing with Image, which is different to dealing with Fantagraphics and all those other style of publishers. It's just a different bike to ride.
Yeah.
But it's more suited for creator-owned projects. So
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't think it's from a creator's point of view, I don't think it's a negative thing at all that Marvel and DC are fighting amongst themselves and their sales are like always on shaky ground, and they're I think it's good for a creator. I still advise creators to find their voice, find their own ideas and do that, as opposed to wanting to grow up to be the next Spider-Man artist, where you've got 6 months to 18 months of burnout ahead, and then what?
Yeah, exactly.
So
you maybe you remember it better than me. Marvel were reprinting everything. You buy the Avengers, but you'd also buy Marvel Triple Action, which was reprinting Avengers from 5 years earlier, and Fantastic Four from 5 years earlier. And that's what they're doing a lot of at the moment, right? The Marvel and DC are doing facsimile editions where they're reprinting like 1970s and 80s comics, 90s comics, which is cool, right? Because it doesn't matter how often I say to like my son Samuel, oh, you really should read, blah blah. It's a great comic. It's hard for him to get around to it, but when it's reprinted as a facsimile thing, and it's part of this month's dump of comics, he's more likely to pick it up and enjoying it. So he's not the only one. I've been rebuying Crisis on Infinite Earths because every reprinted, I don't have the originals, and every reprinted edition, the printing's okay, but the printing on these is really good. So I'm actually quite happy to get it.
Yeah.
But at one point, talking to Sam about it, and how big the sales are for these things, right? Really big sales when they reprint on the facsimiles. Yeah, it's crazy how good the sales are. And I said, and Samuel, the thing is, they don't have to pay an artist, a writer, a letterer. Like, it's all already paid for. And at that point, he was going, oh my God. And they're charging me the same amount they're charging for the brand new, whatever, Avengers. They're charging me the same amount for both of them. I go, yeah, it's a huge gravy train for them on that. But the reason why I bring up the fact that Marvel, I don't know if DC did it so much, but I know Marvel did it for a while, back in like the 70s, I think.
Yeah, I remember all those reprint titles, Marvel Tales and Triple Action, and
yeah. Was that like a precursor to a huge implosion, or was that post implosion and they were just trying to keep things like it? So are we seeing the same symptom again? And is there like what happens after that symptom comes? I maybe need someone like Danny Best, who's more kind of looked at the history of stuff like that. He might know better.
Yeah. Well, I just know for my universe, that the world of Marvel and DC affects my decision making and my future less and less as the days go by. Which is probably saying more about what a has-been loser I am than anything else.
That's not the case at all. Every new page of Chaloner artwork is what I want to see, and definitely your creator-owned stuff, it shines more even than the franchise stuff. And the franchise stuff always looked amazing, but it's the dedication and the love. And what have you got? Oh yeah! Oh man! Little secret to the listener here. I actually saw some pages because I helped you flat. I don't know, 4 or 5 pages, something.
That's right.
And they looked amazing. It was so exciting to have new Chaloner artwork in front of me. Yeah, incredible, wonderful stuff.
And
so how do you feel?
Sorry.
Talk about burying the lead. That's what we should have talked about today. That's like, how do you feel having that in your hot little hands?
That's pretty amazing. It's hitting me more and more as the days go by. Having a byline, Will Eisner and Gary Chaloner is pretty stupidly freaky. It's pinch myself stuff. But it's
and they didn't shrink the font size to make you smaller than Eisner either.
No, but he has the advantage of having the style. Will Eisner's John Law. So
true.
Good on you, Will. But yeah, pretty amazing. And that collection started from an idea of me wanting to do a 20th anniversary edition through Cyclone Comics. I actually went so far as to talk to Dennis Kitchen about it. This is back in 2020, 2022. And I said, I want to do an Australian edition, a trade paperback of just my collected John Law material. And just to circumvent any licensing, international publishing licensing deals, I said it'd just be a boutique edition for 50, 100, 500 issues for the Australian market, and that'd be it. So that if ever you do stitch up a reprint, I've done all the files, I've got all the master InDesign files here. You can have the lot, but you just sell it to the rest of the world except for Australia. And he thought that was, fine, go ahead and do it. And then it was just, COVID happened and my health happened and Parkinson's and the whole bit, and that's got put off and put off and put off until I saw that Hard Case Crime were doing nice comic editions and trade paperbacks and reprints of some crime comics like Mystery and a few other things. And I got in touch with them out of the blue going, I've got this idea for a trade paperback that I've done. I'd already InDesigned the book to about 90% pre-press, designed the whole thing. So I just PDF'd what I'd done, including just placeholder pages and suggestions for what would go on certain blank pages, sent it over to them and said, this is what I have in mind. And they got back and said, Will Eisner, who are you? But Will Eisner, we're interested. And it sort of turned into a project from there. So from those early days.
So you sent it to Hard Case.
Yeah. I just dropped.
So you didn't send it via Dennis.
No, I just got in touch and I is that cheeky? I've always done things like that. Because then you just get back in touch. It saves Dennis a lot of work. So I just got back in touch with Dennis saying, hey, Titan's interested in doing this trade paperback that I was going to do for Cyclone. They want to do it through Hard Case Crime. They're interested. So do you want to pick up the ball and keep on chatting with them? And Dennis went, oh, okay. So because he's a busy man, so he got in touch and the people from Titan were talking to Dennis, and then they got in touch. They CC'd me in all the emails, and Dennis basically said, Gary, you look after it. Just CC me any of the emails that I need to know about. But looks like they're interested. Here's the contract. Here's the deal. Over to you to do all the production. And the production was 9/10 done, except for the new story, which I had to then buckle down and finish off. Which is another one of those deadlines that went flying by. But yes, that's.
But all credit to Dennis. But it's great that you were in charge of visuals from front cover to back cover. Like that's.
And I don't get a credit in the book. I don't get a credit in the book for designing it.
But you're in charge of that. You should have.
No. The indicia that the credits page for Titan I left blank, and they had the master. I sent them the master InDesign files, and they finished off everything, and they inserted all their credits, the corporate credits for themselves. And I forgot to include a credit for myself, and they didn't include it either. They just did a corporate how designers are. So
right.
Anyway. Second
edition. Yeah.
But that's okay, because if you find a mistake in it, I can always blame their graphic designer.
Exactly. Wasn't me.
It wasn't me. Yeah. So anyway, I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
When do I get a copy? When do I get a copy? Like when does the world get copies?
The copy, the overseas, the direct market and the American market and all the English and European market, it's on sale now, as of last week.
Fantastic.
The Australian bookstores, I think, get their copies formally in July, so middle of the year. It's going to the standard distribution in Australia, which I think is later, 3 months delay. So you can get it through your local comic shops in Australia now, if your shipments came through on time from Diamond. Right. But I think formally through the bookstores, Dimmicks and the whole other, bookstores in Australia, that'll be happening middle of the year.
And it's the same edition, like for those completists, like it's exactly the same. Whether it's getting it at
It's not a reprint. It's just pallets have been set aside for Australia, and by the time they get out here, it's middle of the year. So
Well, I'll have to come down to Tasmania and get you to sign and remark a copy for me. That'd be awesome.
You set aside a copy here. I'm just getting my postage, and it's a public holiday here today, so I can't go to the post office.
Okay.
But you're on the list of people I've got to send stuff to. So
you,
and a few other people. So
appreciate it.
You did make
I want it
the
signed.
acknowledgements page on in the inside back cover as well. So
Oh, special.
see your
Thanks. Maybe I'll
writing
sign it.
skills. Ah,
What a job that was. Man, I tell you what, anytime you want flatting done, I'm happy to zoom into 300, 400% on your artwork and immerse myself in it for a couple of days.
oh
It was great.
God, I was such in a maze of deadline hell. So let's do a 24-hour comic. Not. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't
fantastic.
deadline
Cool.
hell. It was just, I've been working on that story for so long, and I'm so slow in my art now that I just wasn't seeing the ending of it. But I was
Yeah.
happy with the way it turned out. I would have liked a little bit more time to work up the art a little bit, but I think it fits in with the rest of the book fine. And very happy with the way the edition turned out. Yeah.
So remind me, how many brand new pages are in there? Pages that no one had ever seen before.
12 to 14. There's one that's like a text title page, so I don't really count that. So,
Right.
but 14 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Fantastic.
And of
Brilliant.
course, when Titan said yes, let's do something, all of my other plans got halted and moved back a little bit. So revving up now that the book is out, I'm revving up the engines again to get back into some semblance of art production, which has been quite difficult after such. I think I did the last art on this book in November last year, late November. Then there was Christmas and the New Year, and then the build up to having the book released. And I've done very little drawing since. So now that it's out, I
You
can.
should you should just do a warm up. Just do some like rough like layouts, maybe of a greener pastures Flash Domingo crossover. Just do rough layouts for someone else
I can
to
see what
ink
you're
or
doing
finish.
there. Yeah. Now, my list of warm-ups is growing. I've got quite a few things to warm up with before I get onto the actual real deal. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I have been pushing ahead with getting some sample proofs of the new Jackaroo comic, which is coming out this year, and I'm very happy with the way the printed proof looks. So I'm going to just buckle down and get stuck into that as soon as we hang up, actually. So
Cool.
yeah. Yeah.
So let's hang up. The earlier I get to see pages from you, the better.